Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, everybody. This is Man Coverage, Knoxville, Nate Digital, James Bonneville, here with you on a Sunday, January 4th. I almost said December, January 14th, 2024. December went by so fast that I kind of still thought it was December, but it's not. The national championship game is over, but college football never really stops, and especially not this year. I mean, the greatest coach of all time has left us. We all knew this day was coming. Everybody kind of picked when it was going to happen. I didn't really think it was going to happen this year just because Bama had such a great season, and Nick Saban did, in my opinion, the best coaching job he's ever done. Considering the lack of talent on this team, it kind of surprised me a little bit. James, what did you think when you heard that Nick Saban was done at Alabama, and what was your reaction?
I've been saying it for the past 5 years. I thought it was pretty eminent, but looking, was I surprised? Yes, but actually, at the same time, the more I thought about it, no, because you look back at this year, Saban wasn't nearly as intense as he was in past years after games where sometimes he's fit to be tied coming off at halftime. And I mean, even that USF Alabama game, what was it, like 10-3, the final and the downpour? It seemed like he was just trying to take it all in. And, like it was his like swan song and trying to take it all in one last time before he moved on. But would it shock me if he stayed on one more year, 2 more years? Nothing shocks me with him. I mean, quite frankly, he's going to go it on top, and it'll be tough for someone to eclipse his records. I mean, like we said before, you don't want to be the guy after the guy. And
No.
Kalen DeBoer's got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a second. I guess the thing with me is I understand, his age, and I understand that he was probably, I think this is actually a great time. I think he made a phenomenal decision, but I just
Yeah.
know, from what I don't know him personally, but I've met Nick Saban a couple times, and what I've known about him from hearing other people who know him, the guy is the most competitive human being on the planet. And I just thought it might take a little bit longer for him to give it up. That was the only thing with me, because he's still coaching at a high level. Bama is still rolling. I mean, they were a 4th and 2 stop away from going to the national championship game with one of his least, in my opinion, talented teams. So that's why I thought he may come back, and why it surprised me a little bit. But honestly, I'm glad he did it now, because a lot of coaches, they stick around, they stay so long, they fight it. They want to coach forever, it seems like, and then you get like what happened in New England, where the Patriots were the second worst team in all of football, and it just didn't look good for Belichick in the last year. So I guess, James, my question to you is, do you think it was a good time, and do you think he made the right decision? Because I kind of do.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, what more does he have left to prove?
Nothing.
I mean, he has. I mean, every time the NCAA has thrown something at him, he has reinvented himself and been better for it. And I mean, like, think of a rule throughout time. He warned people, if you do this, what's going to happen? And he quickly changes course, and now he's leading the charge rather than following the charge. I mean, it's quite frankly amazing what he has done over not only his time at Bama, but at LSU, at Michigan State, hell, Kent State. I mean, most people forget he's a disciple of Don James, the Washington legend. I mean, it's amazing what he's done.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking back, when 19, I believe 79, 78, I can't remember, Nick Saban was getting fired from Ohio State, and our good friend of the program, Jeff Snook, was talking on social media about how he saw Nick Saban walking down near the quad in Columbus with a box, and was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I just got fired." And he was all upset and freaking out. And he's come a long way. That might have not been a great decision to fire that guy, because he is definitely the best coach I've ever seen. I mean, just the consistency that Alabama, went through was bigger than anything I've seen since I heard about Notre Dame back in the day. It's the only thing I can really think about it. But overall, 292, 71 and 1. That is an unbelievable record. I think he was like 202 and 29 at Bama. That's just absolutely redonkulous. And 7 national championships. I mean, if you win one, you're a really good coach. And we're talking about 7. I just don't think there'll be anybody that'll ever top what he's done, especially with the way college football is. You agree with that?
Agreed. The only thing I look back on his career is just the way things went down in Miami, and I don't blame him for that.
No.
You had 2 type A guys between him and Parcells butting heads. I think if given the opportunity again, I'm shocked that he didn't go back to the NFL to give it one more run, because I think he could have done a very good job there as well. But I think you had to give him GM responsibilities too as well, where he could handle both sides. And I think he would have done much better in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, the game is just so different between the NFL and college,
Yeah,
and I'm glad
it
he
really
didn't go
is.
back, honestly, because we've seen it so many times where guys go to the league, and guys that have had so much success in college, they go to the league and just nothing ever works out for them. And the thing about the NFL is, if you don't win right away, a lot of times you get fired. I mean, think about Frank Reich this year in Carolina. The guy was on staff for 14 games and then got fired. I mean, these owners are ridiculous. They'll fire you on a whim, and I'm glad he went. I think he realized that that's what he was good at. I think he realized that he was dominant in college football, and that was probably the place for him. Let's talk about the search, James. First off, I don't believe that Kalen DeBoer was the number one option. I think there was a couple guys in front of him. I think you probably agree with me on that. Who do you think they asked first? And of those guys, why do you think they turned it down?
Well, I think the guy they asked first was Jimmy Sexton. I mean, if you want to talk about winners and losers in this whole Nick Saban retiring thing, Jimmy Sexton made a ton of money through this process because he was leveraging Alabama against everybody. I mean, Alabama used to be the number one job in the country, but the second Nick Saban leaves, it's suddenly not. And I don't think Alabama fans will probably appreciate hearing that, but that's how much capital Nick Saban had. And I think what Jimmy Sexton did was leverage that to get a bunch of his clients pay raises. I mean, Kirby Smart. Why would he leave Georgia? Dabo Sweeney. Why would you leave Clemson? Even though you played at Bama, why would you leave? Sarkisian, same way. Lanning, same way. And now they ended up and the guy who had the smallest contract of the group was Kalen DeBoer. Now, do I think Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin were in play? Lanning, yeah, I do. But do I think Dabo was in play or Kirby Smart? No. I think they went through that to get them pay raises so Jimmy Sexton can make some more money.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think Dabo was going to leave Clemson, especially to go back and replace the GOAT. He's got his own things going on at Clemson right now. He wants to get them back. I think he's dedicated and determined to get them back on top. And the way they finished the season, I can see him doing it. And Kirby Smart, I think we've heard rumors that he may be going to the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know how true that is. But I could see that, but I don't see him leaving Georgia to go to Bama. That doesn't make sense to me. And honestly, Lane Kiffin's got his best team that he's ever had set up for 2024. So I didn't see him leaving. Why do you think Dan Lanning turned the job down? Because I do believe they asked him. And why would you think he would stay at Oregon? Just because of the recruiting he's done and the success they've had, in the beginning? And what do you think?
I think he built something there. And honestly, Uncle Phil being in his back pocket, helping out with an NIL approach helps out quite a bit too as well. I mean, one of the least known factors out there that people don't know about is Bama really wasn't that big into the NIL scene from the transfer portal or from high school. You had to earn it on the field at Alabama before you got paid anything.
Which is how it should work.
It's how they do it at Ohio State, a lot of schools. But now, I mean, Alabama's going to have to become more in play in the NIL front in high school to get some of those players. I mean, look at all the guys they've lost in the meantime. Now, you look at DeBoer's hire, and that happened really quick. I think they had to do it just because they had to make sure they didn't lose a lot of guys to transfer portal. But and I mean, unless you haven't watched the show, I've been a big Kalen DeBoer fan. There are parts of this hire that kind of concern me though, because he's not known for being the greatest of recruiters. And unless you haven't followed Dan Mullen at all, if you're not recruiting the SEC, especially at a program like Bama, you're in trouble.
Well,
I mean,
especially with what's going on, they've got we got Texas, we got Oklahoma,
yeah,
both coming into the SEC, making it even deeper and harder.
yeah,
So that to me concerns me. What kind of leash is this guy on? What kind of time does he have? Are they expecting him to make the the 12-team playoff and win a couple games in it in year one? Do they expect him to win a national championship? What happens, James, when they have a season, in year one where he goes 9-4 or 10-3 or whatever it may be? Nick Saban lost a game. People were calling for him to retire.
yeah,
And he's the greatest coach of all time. So what kind of pressure do you think he's on immediately? And
immense,
what kind of
immense.
time you think he's got to get it going?
Because people in their alumni base, I mean, people forget there is no other pro teams in Alabama. None. There's just Alabama. So that's everything they're working on. And people, I mean, think of the coaches that came behind Bear Bryant. I mean, they were damn good coaches. Ray Perkins got fired after 4 years, or he left to go to the Giants. Bill Curry left after 3 years. I mean, these guys did pretty freaking well, but they didn't do well enough to Alabama standards. And both of them moved on. And you and I both know, I mean, 10 wins ain't enough in Alabama. They are looking at winning national titles, and anything less is, I mean, going to be nothing. I mean, honestly, I give Kalen DeBoer 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I think he had done so well at Washington, right away that I feel like he had built up some credibility with that university. I feel like the fans were in love with him, the players were in love with him, the administration. I feel like he could have stayed at Washington for a long time, and they were going to give him a raise anyway. And then once Bama came calling, I felt like the raise was going to be even more substantial. So I thought being him, I thought he might stay there. But I give the guy credit for having these type of balls to make this jump and be like, man, I feel like I can be successful. He obviously wouldn't take it if he didn't think he'd be successful there, James.
Well, I mean, the guy lost 12 games in his entire coaching career. Yeah. And we're not talking after a couple seasons. This guy's coached many years. And the one issue I have with DeBoer going to Alabama is I want to see who he hires as a staff, because that is going to be very, very critical to this from a recruiting aspect. I mean, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. Besides Grubb, their offensive coordinator, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those people on the Alabama staff, if they can get them to stay. Because they have to from a recruiting front. I mean, DeBoer's, he has no connections in the Southeast, none. And now you're expecting him to go in and recruit at a high level right off the bat. And it's going to happen quick. I mean, recruiting season's already in full bore for next year.
Well, they got to get going. They've already lost Williams, the 5-star recruit, already decommitted. I mean, he may come back, but I doubt it. Usually when guys decommit, they go somewhere else. He's decommitted. He's a 5-star wideout. Ryan Williams, he's talking about going elsewhere. Isaiah Bond, the wide receiver from Bama, is already committed to Texas. So it's like you got to get this going quickly if you want to keep the guys you have and add to it. And I do, in my opinion, think that Bama needs to add guys and they're losing them. So do you think he's kind of already fallen behind a little bit?
A little bit. I don't know how much, because remember, there'll be another transfer portal time period during spring ball too as well. And I think he may pick up there. But the problem is you lost 15 practices. And like we saw in our last show talking to Brian Browning, I mean, people make blow off spring ball as this like who gives a crap. 15 practices is important. Is
Yeah.
really freaking important because you could take a kid who rarely developed and suddenly becomes a starter just like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the left tackle Simmons from Ohio State who missed all of
Yeah.
spring practice, and I think it affected him, and I think it affected that unit that they never really took them a while to get going. They never really established themselves as a cohesive unit, and I think that the spring is important. That's why we see more and more kids going into starting school right in December and
Yeah.
practicing with the bowl practice so that they get the bowl preparation practices in. They get a feel for the program, see how it works, especially going into a very important bowl game. Then they go in for the spring, get the spring game, get the spring practices, and then by the time summer workouts in, they've been there for a while. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's really important, and I think how, as you mentioned, how quickly he can get his staff in place is going to be crucial. And then what this February recruiting situation looks like for them, I think is also pretty important as they move on because they've already lost Bond, they've already lost Williams, they lost the offensive lineman to Ohio State. I think there's a couple that I'm forgetting. I think they'll be pretty active when the portal opens back up. Do you agree with that?
They're going to have to be, honestly. I mean, there's some positions, I think, at the receiving core. I mean, granted, you saw what they did at receiving core at Washington. When he first showed up, that was a huge negative. And now they're going to have 3 receivers drafted in this draft. One will be drafted in the first round, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised. Polk's probably gone by the 3rd.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that was huge for them. And in my opinion, as me and you have talked about several times on this show, the wide receiver position was, potentially the Achilles heel for Alabama the entire season. I mean, there was no Calvin Ridley on this team. There was no,
Julio
Jones. There was no,
Devonta
Cooper, what's his name? Mari Cooper. There was Devontae Smith. You name it. There was just no breakout guy. And we talked about this all year. There was no guy like that throughout this whole roster. No Derrick Henry in the running back field. No Mark Ingram, anything like that. So that to me is going to be crucial to him is who he can get in the portal to help him in year one and how they can finish up this recruiting. Let's talk about some of these other guys because we've hit on Bama now for 20 minutes. I want to talk about some of these other coaching vacancies that have been filled and also the ones that are still open. I guess while we're right here, let's talk about Washington. I've heard some names mentioned for this already. The one that keeps coming up is the guy that didn't really deserve the Arizona Cardinals job, but got it after being at Texas Tech. And I'm talking about Cliff Kingsbury, and I've heard his name at Washington. Who do you think is going to get the Washington job? And, who's in the running for it, I guess, in your mind right now?
Well, I mean, who's in the running for it and who's going to get it could be 2 different things. Who I think should get it should be a guy like Jed Fish or Lance Leopold.
Yeah.
I mean, both are on contracts where I think Washington can really help them, bump them up to a Big Ten conference. But I think they're so worried about winning the press conference right now. I think they may go after a Kingsbury. Now, a name I keep hearing getting kicked around, which shocks me, yet at the same time doesn't, is Chris Peterson. Having Chris Peterson come back to Seattle and try to reclamate that. Now, how often have we seen that happen? I mean, Mac Brown, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen. Do I think he's going to come back? I really don't. I think he kind of is a dude that stepped away on his own terms, but I agree with you. I think that would be a big plus for Washington if they could get him to come back. I mean, this guy dominated at Boise State, did a really good job, in my opinion, at Washington, and I think would be a great fit for where they're at as a program right now, especially having to go into the Big Ten this next year. I think this hire is going to be crucial for them, and I'm glad they didn't just hire somebody right away. I think they're taking their time. I think they want to do it quick, but they don't want to make a mistake here because this is a program that's in a really good spot right now, and I think they want to stay there. I like Lance Leopold for this job. I think this is a perfect step up for him. He's done a great job at Kansas. I mean, if you can win at Kansas, James, you can win anywhere. in
Yeah,
my opinion. I mean, I just truly believe that because it's such a hard place to compete at. So I feel like Washington would be, a good kind of landing spot, so to speak, for Lance Leopold because he deserves a new job if he wants it. But I think it seems like he's kind of committed because I know he's had offers.
yeah.
You mentioned who, we've talked about a lot, and I've heard some whispers about is Matt Campbell, Iowa State. Do you think he's continues to stay put where he's at, or you think he may be
I would
looking at
go.
openings?
If I were him, I would go. Granted, he doesn't have those connections on the West Coast, which is going to hurt him, especially since they recruit really, I mean, not only the Washington, but really heavily into California too, as well, especially Southern California. I mean, he's going to need some help from a coaching aspect in who he hires to help him out with that. But I could see Matt Campbell moving on. I mean, quite frankly, I'm shocked he hasn't already, to tell you the
Yeah, I
truth.
am too. I'm supremely shocked. I mean, he's made a commitment to that university, and they just haven't really taken off. I mean, the best years are kind of in the past for Iowa
Yeah,
State. I feel like this would be a good jump for him. Kalen DeBoer, some people don't realize this guy was 104-12 as a head football coach. So. He's made a big mark at Washington, and it's going to be a tough act to follow. But I feel like one of those guys could do a really good job. Leopold or Campbell would be those would be who I would hire if I was in charge and I was the athletic director at Washington, which is a job I would take, guys. If you want to call me, I would take that job because it would be a pay grade up keep for me, and I would just hire Matt Campbell or Lance Leopold because I know those two guys would be successful. Talk to me about the other jobs that are still open right now. What do you think anymore? You think we're done here with
I we're
all
not
the
we're not
firings?
we're not done yet.
I
I
didn't
don't
think
think
so.
I don't think it's going to be firings per se. I think it's going to be people potentially leaving for the NFL.
Yeah,
I
there's a
mean,
lot of job openings in the NFL right now. I mean, we saw Bill Belichick get canned. We saw, they said it was an amicable departure, but I have a hard time believing that Pete Carroll asked to quit coaching.
yeah,
So that those two jobs are available. San Diego is available. Excuse me, L.A. I keep
yeah.
forgetting that the
I said the
Chargers
same
moved.
thing yesterday. Yeah. That's a job. I've heard Harbaugh is interviewing for that today, actually. Um, I, I,
God, I
I,
hope he goes.
I mean, there are three coaches right now. Well, there were four, because I thought Kalen DeBoer was going to get the Seattle Seahawks job, to tell you the truth. That's why it kind of threw me when his name got kind of thrown in at the end. But I could see guys like Ryan Day has that fit, Jim Harbaugh has that fit, and Lincoln Riley has that fit to coach in the NFL. And I could see one, if not all three. I haven't heard Day's name being kicked around, but Harbaugh and Riley, I have heard it kicked around for potential jobs. And then you got Kirby Smart at Georgia. I mean, if
Yeah,
Kirby leaves, who the hell's going to get that job?
I have
I,
no idea.
I,
No
I mean,
idea.
I
Georgia would be in big, big trouble in my mind. And I feel like that's why they're not going to let him leave. I feel like, with the Falcons, offer, I believe, really being out there and
yeah,
available to him right now, he can walk in to the president's office, the AD's office, whoever, and just say, listen, I want to stay here, but, they're offering me this. What can you guys do here? And I feel like he can kind of make his own bread here and really get whatever he wants. Not that he doesn't already have a pretty good situation at Georgia, but I think he can improve it. I think he'll use that and he'll stay there because I feel like he can. I think he feels like he can dominate the SEC now with the GOAT being gone. I think he's kind of excited about that. Do you think that might affect things at all? Nick Saban being gone?
it could. He just, I mean, I know a lot of these guys, the transfer portal and NIL is driving them nuts. Now, say he did leave, all right? And I'm not saying it's going to happen because, quite frankly, until shit happens, I don't believe it. If I were Georgia, I would hire Jamie Chadwell because this guy knows how to freaking coach. Now, is it going to win the press conference and make the alumni happy? Because, I mean, they're not getting a huge, huge name. But everywhere Jamie Chadwell goes, all he does is freaking win. And where's his best base for recruiting and coaching? Down south.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be an incredible hire. Will they do it? Probably not, because they're so worried about winning the damn press conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important, especially after being a team that went so long without holding that trophy and then keeping it for 2 years straight. I feel like they want to keep the momentum they have and they want to stay on top, so they do anything to do that. And I just don't think they'd take a chance on a guy who's maybe not that he's not proven,
Yeah.
but at the big time, Power Five, SEC, Big Ten level, he hasn't really done it. So I feel like that might be something they may stay away from. Not that I don't think he couldn't do the job, but I just don't feel like they're going to make that move. What other jobs, are you looking at right now that you're thinking about as far as coaches that have taken over, whether it be, Dan Elko at Texas A&M or, maybe even some second year guys like Matt Rule at Nebraska? Who do you think is going to really surprise us in year one or year two at the new place that they are at as far as some of these coaches go?
Matt Rule would be the most obvious choice of the year one guys. I'm not going to lie. I mean, they went from pretty decent situations where they were sitting. Like, I look at Mike Elko as a prime example. And now with Kalen DeBoer. I mean, you look back at the greatest thing that Mal Moore did when he hired Nick Saban was he made sure that Nick Saban didn't have to deal with the boosters. And the boosters at Alabama are freaking crazy. So he can concentrate 100% on football. DeBoer and Elko are not going to have that luxury because they don't have the cachet that Saban did coming in. How does that affect their coaching? Because right now, I mean, now you've just added to the work where you got to balance keeping your kids on the team without getting in the transfer portal. Plus, you got to deal with the money folks and the boosters. I mean, it's like a no-win situation in many ways. And I worry about a lot of these coaches where, I mean, heck, you look at a guy like Frank Cignetti at Indiana. Sure, the bar ain't that freaking high, but he doesn't have to deal with the freaking boosters 100% of the time where he could just do coach football.
Wow. Think about that. Getting to actually focus on what your job is. That would be nice. That would be nice. And some people are going on and on about how Nick Saban retired because of the NIL and because of the transfer portal. And I'm like, no. I was like, I don't think that really is what swayed him. Do I think he enjoyed it? No. But let's be honest. What's the greatest thing about Nick Saban has been his ability to adapt. I mean, he was old school football, defense first, run the rock. We can't even really, a lot of casual fans can't even name who was playing quarterback for Bama. Those first 5, 6, 7 years, AJ McCarron, McElroy,
Croyle.
Yeah, Brody Croyle, all those guys that were kind of just game managers because that's all it took within his offense. And then, you talk about the read option and hiring Lane Kiffin and then Sarkisian and really making a change. That's what he was the best at. So I feel like I don't think that scared him away. But I do think it's created a whole new set of things that people are going to have to keep their eyes on while they're trying to also coach. They've got to keep all these other things going. A guy that I want to ask you about who's not in year one or year two, but has had some, really high expectations, has done very well in recruiting, but still been unable to get over the hump in Miami. Is this Cristobal's last year at with the Hurricanes? If they can't, really do something. I mean, you think with the ACC being like it is, he could win there with these recruits he's gotten, but it just hasn't worked out. Do you think he's at the end of his leash, so to speak?
I tend to think so. And the reason why I say that is, I mean, obviously Tyler Van Dyke was going to move on to greener pastures, whichever pasture that. I end up with Wisconsin, which I'm kind of questioning that move. But they were going after a big-time name in transfer portal. Cam Ward and DJ Uiagalelei. I mean, whoever they could get. Do you know who they ended up with? The quarterback from the University of Albany. Yes, the University of Albany. If you know what their freaking mascot is, you really watch a little too much college football.
Yeah, I'd give you a sucker.
I mean, unbelievable how that program, when he came in, there was so much ballyhoo. The U is back. The U is back. Man, they are a freaking mess.
Yeah.
And I don't know if even Jesus could save the U anymore.
Yeah, they're, I've watched a couple of their games last year, and it's just like even some of those games they should have won. Georgia Tech, case in point, where all they had to do was take a knee, and they figured out a way to f that up. That's what worries me about them. They couldn't win the ones they were supposed to, and not to mention, beat somebody that they shouldn't. Plus, you got to think Florida State is going to be back next year, and I feel like still a good football team. I loved the hire that Duke made. And I think that they're in a pretty good position, especially after getting Malik Murphy. I like that. I feel like, North Carolina wants to, rectify what happened last year. I think Clemson is going to be a good football team. I feel like the ACC is going to be better. So I feel like it's going to be harder for them to get back to where they want to be. The one team that, also says we're back every year, unfortunately, this year they were right, and I'm talking about the Texas Longhorns. They actually put together a really good season. And case in point, they had a really good quarterback and three good quarterbacks actually, and got a great group of wide receivers, unbelievable D line. Really impressed with what they did this year at Texas. What do you think is going to happen now with Quinn Ewers announcing that he's coming back? And Malik Murphy's gone, so I guess we got Arch at number 2. You think he sits another year and waits to play until
I
year 3?
I think that spring ball is going to be very, very, very telling. Um, Quite frankly, I look at Texas and there's some serious question marks I have going into next year. Specifically, let me look it up here. I mean, yeah, you're going to have Jonathan Brooks back, who's, I mean, a phenomenal talent. I mean, quite frankly, if he didn't get hurt, would have been the best running back in college football, bar none. But
Right.
they lose a lot from that receiving core, and I mean a lot. And I'm worried about them, especially when you go on the defensive side of the ball, because unless you've never watched college football before, Sweat and Murphy were phenomenal at defensive tackle. I mean, you had to game plan around just those 2D tackles because their D backs weren't great, but you weren't going to run the ball up the middle on Texas last year.
No, and now the expectation is to win the national championship. I mean, think about this year getting where as far as they did, being in that game against Washington till the end. I feel like the next step is to win the title, and they're going to be in the SEC this next year, and it's going to be a whole new ball game for them.
Yeah.
And I just think they may. I would not be surprised if Texas took a step back, just with the increased expectations. A lot of guys that helped this team be where they were moving on. I think it's very possible. Staying right there, and I want to get your thoughts on Elko at Texas A&M. Do you feel like he can do what the previous regime couldn't, and that is make Texas A&M a college football playoff contender and a team that can potentially win a national championship? I mean, that's why Jimbo was fired, right? I mean, he won games. They won 8 games. They won 10 games. They won 7 games. I mean, they had some bad years, but the reason he was fired was he could never get it done. What do you think happens now?
Honestly, if Elko can do it, it would be a miracle, quite frankly. I mean, I love Mike Elko. I think he's a great coach, but their freaking booster base is batshit crazy. And I mean, they tried to buy a team thinking that was going to come together. I mean, honestly, go back to after Jameis Winston left Florida State. Was any Jimbo Fisher team like competent? I mean, I wouldn't say competent. I mean, but competitive. Like team that you thought would roll out in the field, and you're like, yeah, this is a team that can win a national title. I never felt it, and I'm like, it just it seems like no matter who they put in at Texas A&M, they find a way to fail because their boosters can't stay off the freaking sidelines. They try to coach the game themselves. I don't unless they can pull a Mal Moore and do the exact same thing they did with Saban. I'm not sure if it's possible. And just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you can win games.
No, there's no doubt about that. And we've seen the places that have meddling boosters, like Auburn is a great
Yeah.
example, struggle in this NIL period because you have to let the coaches do their jobs. And if they're in these meetings with you all day, it's difficult for them to take care of all the avenues they need to. Before we get out of here, we've kind of hit this coaching circuit hard and heavy, but I want to talk too about some of the other teams that have had success either with the portal or with their guys coming back. Obviously, I want to talk about that mainly because my teams haven't had all their players come back. But for right now, I want to talk mainly about what Ole Miss has done in the portal. I mean, I've been blown away by some of these guys. Tyler Barron, pass rusher out of Tennessee, Walter Nolan out of Texas A&M, and more. Some of these guys that Ole Miss has pulled has really impressed me. Who else besides Ohio State and Ole Miss has impressed you with what they've done, either with the recruiting or, with their portal pools?
I think Auburn has done a really good job in the recruiting aspect. They've really they've really outshot their mark because they've just with Hugh Freeze. But Hugh Freeze has always been known as being a good recruiter. I think one thing to kind of go along with your Ole Miss point is to talk about their schedule next year. I mean, they've got a schedule that really, if they realize they got the players and the schedule to make that run, and I think that's why they've been so aggressive. I mean, non-conference, Furman, Middle Tennessee State, at Wake Forest and Georgia Southern. Oh, that's 4 wins. Then home against Kentucky, at South Carolina, at LSU. Now that Jaden Daniels is gone, what are they going to be like? Home against Oklahoma, at Arkansas, home against Georgia, at Florida, home against Mississippi State. They play all the right games at home. I mean, I look at their schedule.
That's crucial in the SEC.
I mean, I look at their schedule right now, and I'm like, there are 3 games potentially they could have issues with. Otherwise, mark them down for 9.
Yeah, I mean, that's very crucial is who the hell you're going to have to beat. That always plays a big role, but you got to get this roster thing right. And when I look at, the transfer portal right now, another team that's really killing it and has gotten notice for it is, Texas A&M, Elko and company have got the second greatest transfer class. They've got 22 guys that have committed to them in the portal. But at the same time, they lost Walter Nolan. They lost the wide receiver who, was one of the biggest recruits they had that year. And now he's gone. I think he committed to Oregon, if memory serves correct. And then, Florida State has also brought in, 9 4-star guys. Colorado's right there. Oregon's right there. These are teams that I think we're already close as far as Florida State goes and Oregon goes, and both of them got better. So where do you think Florida State and Oregon fit in next year with what they've done in the portal race?
It's hard to tell with Florida State because they just lost so much in the process. I mean, you lose guys, especially in that receiving core with Coleman and Wilson. I mean, they've got to completely rebuild that receiving core, and there is no depth behind DJU at quarterback. So they gotta basically nail it there. Now, do I think they're going to do well in the ACC? Yeah, but I mean, right now, if you put a gun to my head, I'm going to take Clemson because I think there's a lot more stability in that team. I think Norvell's going to have a real hard. They're going to have a very good spring practice to see what their team really is going to be, because just because they were 4 or 5-star coming out of high school doesn't mean they're still a 4 or 5-star talent. So, right.
But Colorado, Florida State, we could start calling Florida State Alabama South, because if you look at the guys that they got Roydell Williams, the running back. They got Earl Little, the second, the corner from Bama. They got Terrence Ferguson, the offensive lineman from Bama. Malik Benson, the wide receiver from Bama. I mean, they got a lot of Bama players, and also Marvin Jones Jr.,
who
is an edge guy from Georgia. So it's not like they went out, and then DJU, who I didn't even mention, they got some guys that, are proven. Jalen Brown, the wide receiver from LSU. It's not like they were going to Albany to get their guys. They've got some good looking dudes coming in there for the Noles, which, as you mentioned, they needed with everybody that left.
The one that really sticks out in my head, though, is Georgia getting Trevor Etienne from Florida. I mean, not only is that a huge slap in the face, but, I mean, Georgia's running back situation wasn't stellar last year. Was it bad?
Agreed.
No, but it wasn't what it needed. And now you add Etienne to all they bring back. I mean, granted, the receiving core, I mean, you lose a big piece in Brock Bowers. I mean, that is a difference maker that people, I don't think, truly understand. Plus, McConkey is going pro. And, I mean, he's Wes Welker. He's Danny Amendola. He's going to be a guy who, if Bill Belichick was still coaching in New England, he'd want, because he knows how to hit those gaps in zones to get you first downs and move the chains. I don't know what Georgia has except a bunch of track guys right now. And I think Carson Beck could have issues with that, but that offensive line's so good, they're just going to lean on that running game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I believe it was late yesterday, Cam Ward, announced that he was going to Miami. Previously said he was going to the NFL. Yeah, now he is he's committed to the Canes. So I guess I can't make fun of the Albany transfer anymore, because now they've got Cam Ward. So he's going to have no excuses. And to be honest, I'm not sure Cam Ward is the guy that can win you a national championship. Is he good? Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with this kid, but I'm just saying, I don't know if that's the guy that's going to win you a national championship, although potentially an upgrade over what he's got. So
Miami had more issues than quarterback. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it seemed like that team was just in free fall. Another name I want to throw out there is Malachi Nelson, transferring from USC to Boise State. I mean, this kid was a very ballyhooed 5-star quarterback coming to play for Lincoln Riley last year, had some injuries, transferred out, and ended up at Boise. I mean, Spencer Danielson nailed a big one right off the bat. Because, I mean, when I heard his name being thrown out there, I didn't expect him to go to Boise.
This is the world we live in now. Guy transfers from USC to Boise. A guy who plays for the Gators transfers to Georgia. The most hated rival of that team. This is where we're at, James, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. It truly is. I mean, the hardest part fans are going to have is remembering who's on whose team. Like Ohio State fans now have to realize Julian Fleming plays for Penn State. I mean, there's so many things that, left is right, up is down. Nothing makes sense anymore.
Yeah, well, they can have him. We're good at wideout for a while. I think I've been putting it off to the end, but now we can talk about it. I've been very impressed with what Ryan Day has done. Not only adding guys, which they needed to do. They got some depth at quarterback, which was crucial. They got Judkins from Ole Miss, which was huge. They got some O-line help from Bama, which was nice. But the guys that are coming back, I mean, Travion Henderson returning, Egbuka coming back, JT Talamula coming back, Jack Sawyer coming back, Hancock coming back. I mean, these people all want to rip on this guy and call for his job when he's 11-1, but I just don't think you can question the overall culture of the program when there's this many guys returning, which surely, James, a lot of them could have gotten drafted.
I heard a story on the radio the other day talking about the morning after the national championship game this past Tuesday. And heck, we didn't even talk about that today. But
thank God.
There was an email sent out to all football former alumni talking about the importance of NIL, and we can't ever let this happen again. And look at how much has changed in the last week. I mean, you've seen a lot more guys stay than ever before. I mean,
ever.
they're trying to set this up. Now, the key to next year, if they could figure out that offensive line, yeah, they're picked to win the Big Ten. Plain and simple. I mean,
Well,
Michigan's going to lose a lot. I mean, sure, Mason Graham comes back, Kenneth Grant comes back. They still have a lot in that defense, but offensively, I mean, unless Haskins really steps up, I mean, Blake Corum's not going to be playing running back in Ann Arbor next year.
no, and that guy's been a staple for their program for a long
Yeah.
time. So I'm glad that he's finally gone. And JJ McCarthy announced that he is moving on and heading to the NFL. I've got to imagine some of those guys have to be out of eligibility at some point, considering a lot of them have played there for a decade. Hopefully they'll come back down to earth, and it's going to come down to who, what happens with their coach. Is he suspended? Does he leave? I think if he leaves, I think they stay in house and promote Sharon Moore, right?
Well, I heard that, and what's funny is soon before the game, I kept hearing rumors of Kalen DeBoer to Michigan. Well, obviously that's not going to happen now, so it means it's going to have to be Sharon Moore. But I mean, what's the sanctions going to be? What coach is going to want to take that with sanctions potentially already on top of them? That's why I think
is he in trouble too? I mean, he was on the staff,
yeah.
So I don't know how his hands are completely clean, but that'll be interesting to watch, and that's something that we'll have to discuss as we move forward. What happens there and who else is moving around. But you mentioned that you don't think it's done. You think there's going to be some more changes, more guys maybe going to the NFL. Do you think that Lincoln Riley leaves? Because I've heard rumors about him getting offers. I've heard rumors that he may go to the Chargers because from all indications, they really want to get somebody who can help Justin Herbert out there.
Yeah, I that makes a lot of sense. I mean, quite frankly, like Harbaugh really doesn't. I mean, he's a good football guy, but he's never had a quarterback of that cachet. And even though he's an offensive guy, he's been a conservative offensive guy, even back during his San Francisco days. That's why, Lincoln Riley seems like the most logical fit. And if you had to put a number 2 in there, if you're going to pick a coach, Ryan Day, but his name is not anywhere out there and is not showing any signs he's going to go to the NFL.
Yeah, I just don't think he leaves this year. Not with, I'd have a hard time with him convincing all these guys to come back, including, almost the entire defense and offense as well. Travion Henderson, Igbuka. The list goes on. And then he goes in there. It's like, yeah, guys, I'm out. I'm going to the Chargers. I just think his credibility would all be shot if he convinces everybody on the team to run it back and then he bolts. So I don't think he's going to move, just not at this time. He may go to the NFL because I could kind of see him wanting to try his hand in that, but I think he stays put for now.
If he did go to the NFL, the 2 jobs that kind of like pop up in my mind, and one's already gone, would have been New England or the Giants. He's from the Northeast. It'd be a decent fit, and he's from there. It ain't gonna happen this year, that's for sure.
The only job that I thought, might potentially be something that both those guys would be privy to, and I'm talking about Lincoln Riley and Ryan Day, is the Carolina Panthers job. Okay, you've got to think they want to bring somebody in there that can help Bryce Young, help develop him. Look at what CJ Stroud's doing in Houston. They're still playing. They demolished the Cleveland Browns yesterday, 45-14. And, you can't not give Ryan Day credit for that. And then you got, Caleb Williams, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Kyler Murray. Everybody that Lincoln Riley's had his hands on has done pretty well. So I feel like the Panthers may go in that direction. You think that job is even appealing to these guys at all?
Honestly, no, because of the ownership group. Look at Vrabel in Tennessee. You go back to Jeff Fisher when he was still coaching the Titans. He did not want to draft Vince Young. No. Instead, Bud Adams stepped in and made them draft Vince Young. When you can't even run your own team, what are you supposed to do? I mean, it's your fault if he doesn't work too as well. I mean, it's a no-win situation. I mean, some of these owners have got to stop act like they're playing fantasy football just because they have a lot of money. You're rich because you're experts in what you do. You hire experts at what they do to run your business.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I know.
That's like saying Jerry Jones is going to take a step back in Dallas. Yeah. Let somebody else come in and be the GM. That's never happening. So,
well, hey, there's a reason why they haven't won a playoff game since when? Jesus Christ spoke in Omaha? I mean.
Yeah, I think, what was that guy's name? I think he played for Navy, and Roger Staubach was the quarterback. Maybe I can't remember, but anyway, lots of stuff going on. We'll be back to check in and update everybody on our thoughts of what's happening in college football. We got still recruiting coming up here pretty quickly in February. We've got still moves to be made with the Alabama situation and other places where the coaches have left. There's going to be additional transfers going, but big one yesterday with Cam Ward going to Miami. That was kind of unexpected with him already declaring for the draft. Any final thoughts from you, James, before we're out?
I think people have got to keep a bigger eye on the coordinators after the hires of the head coach, because in many ways they're almost just as important as the head coach hire. And I'm not going to lie, there's been some odd hirings in the OC and DC range. And just because you're good at school A doesn't mean you're going to be good at school B. Culture fits. So
yeah, which ones you think? Which ones scare you? So far,
trust me, that would have to be for a whole other show, man. We don't have enough time for that today. We'll talk about
which one scares you. Which one scares you the most? I guess.
Oh, jeez, I just had that up and I pulled it down. Hold up. He did this to me after I shut it down after I got through my list.
No, I'm just saying, we've already seen a lot of guys get hired. We've already seen some moves being made as far as coaches getting fired. There's going to be more movement. I mean, these guys are just now breaking from the American Football Conference. So
I got one right now for you. Colin Klein going to Texas A&M.
Yeah,
I love Colin Klein. Right? I love Colin Klein. I don't know if he's going to fit with what Elko wants to do. Yeah. And on top of that, now you got to deal with those boosters. I mean, honestly, I know the paycheck's nice, but do you want to have that scarlet letter on you if things go sideways?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it works out, but been interesting so far. I'm glad that we didn't have to talk about the national championship game because I'm still barfing in my mouth from watching that.
You knew they were going to win after that first drive, man.
I knew they were going to win when I watched Dylan Johnson get hurt on the last offensive play when Washington was playing Texas. As soon as I saw that injury, I knew they were done. I mean, in the first quarter, Michigan had already gotten 170 yards rushing, and I just knew that Washington was going to be able to run the ball with him banged up, and I think he finished with like 40 yards, and that to me was impressive considering he was dragging his leg behind him. But I knew when he was hurt, there was no way they were going to win.
Yeah.
All right, boss. Keep it up, and we'll talk again real soon. Okay.
You got it.
All right, this is Man Coverage. This is January 14, 2024. Go check the shows out on YouTube, at Man Coverage 2075. Have a great day and enjoy the holiday tomorrow, buddy.
All right, man. Talk to you.